O programa a seguir é destinado somente a adolescentes e adultos.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. Some of the victims bore out the fact that they had been partially devoured.
It's kill or be killed. The zombie is enjoying its most popular day.
Didn't mean to invent a new zombie. I love the old zombies.
Medical examinations of some of the victims bore out the fact that they had been partially devoured.
Mr. President, in your recent budget, just to make sure I understand, you're asking for a $50 billion emergency defense supplemental to protect America from zombies.
I believe this is the great challenge of the beginning of the 21st century.
Zombies.
Zombies. At first, they were merely cinematic villains designed to entertain and amuse us.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
They delighted us with their vacant stares, their clumsy walking, and their dreadful personal hygiene. But what exactly is a zombie?
A zombie, by folk definition, is a living dead. It's an individual who has been magically brought to his end, only to be somehow magically resuscitated, always, it's said, to be led away to a life of enslavement.
Without any warning.
I am petrified of zombies. As far as all the movie monsters go, they scare me the most. I think it's because they're a walking disease.
Cause mutation.
They're us. They're us, man. An unfulfilled life. That's why they're so horrifying. You get one chance in life, and you never got to do what you wanted, and you had to make money to get by, and zombies are us.
Feast upon the flesh.
When I see a creature with no light behind the eyes, and yet an incredible will to do nothing except tear the flesh from my bones, I say, that's a zombie.
With all due respect, Mr. President, are you sure this wasn't a movie you saw? I mean, why?
Because they're real.
Yeah, but why
And it's a danger to the American people. It's a danger to your children, Jim.
Sorry, my name is Barry.
There are three phases to the zombie film in cinema. It started out with stuff like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, White Zombie, I Walked with the Zombies. Those films sort of looked at zombies in a different way. They were sort of the somnambulist, or the being controlled, the mind slave. They become mindless zombies. That all changed, obviously, in 1968 when George Romero made Night of the Living Dead, because the zombies became more of a menace, like a mindless menace that was out to physically harm us and consume us. That's when they became really scary.
I had written a short story, which I ripped off from a Richard Matheson novel called I Am Legend, which I thought was about revolution, except he started when the whole world had changed. There was one man left.
George Romero always says that he never invented the idea of zombies and Night of the Living Dead. He says he stole it. Richard Matheson wrote a great book called I Am Legend. It's one of my favorites. And it's sort of a siege story about the rest of the world being taken over by vampires. And there's one solitary human being, and he's barricaded himself in his home, and he's trying to fend off the invading swarms of vampires.
Richard Matheson's novel, I Am Legend, is enormously influential in the development of the zombie movie. There are three direct adaptations of it. There is The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, and it was remade as The Omega Man. Also an interesting movie because it tries to deal with certain racial tensions in America at that time. And then finally, you have the Will Smith movie, I Am Legend, which is certainly the great big honking version of this story. It's got special effects. It's got big actor in Will Smith. And it's the story of one man who is the only survivor of some kind of zombie virus.
I had never thought of them as zombies in Night of the Living Dead. They were flesh eaters. I didn't want to do vampires. And I said, well, I need a creature. And I said, okay, somebody who just, the dead aren't staying dead. And when they come back, they are hungry. And they want to eat live flesh.
It's undeniable that he is the grandfather of the zombie film as we know it today because of Night of the Living Dead.
As the zombie horror genre continued to grow, filmmakers began to explore the dark humor in the undead.
You look like shit.
And then I guess the third phase was around Return of the Living Dead, when zombies ceased to become scary anymore because they gave them a voice, they allowed them to talk and make jokes, and ever since they really haven't been scary.
They still have that. Yeah.
The thing about funny zombie movies is it is really hard to do, and frankly that's why everybody was so absolutely astonished by Shaun of the Dead, because not only is it very funny, first of all, it's also quite a sharp piece of social commentary. I mean, it does suggest in a very straightforward way that a lot of people are sleepwalking through their lives. They're dead above the neck, even though they're not actually dead.
They're obviously comedies, and Fido, there's kind of a wicked little simmering subplot where Carrie-Anne Moss's character is obviously smitten with her zombie, Billy Connolly. So you can't help but look at the genre from that angle, because there's just so much fun, interesting, wicked, absurd stuff to explore there.
And did you know that they have 6 zombies? 6. And when his wife asked me how many we had, I didn't know what to say.
Fido is a comedy in the sense that it is funny, but it's very specifically satirical. It's a movie that uses a kind of wry humor to expose certain social hypocrisies, to poke fun at them with the intent of revealing them for the hypocrisies they are.
Paradoxically, although dead, zombies continue to evolve.
Die-hard zombie fans have broken zombies down into a lot of subsections. When you come right down to it, there are 2 kinds of zombies. There are zombies who are self-driven. They've come back from the grave for one reason or another, in one way or another, and are compelled to eat flesh. And then there are the mind control zombies. Someone has brought them back and is using bodies to do something that they want.
It wants me.
They're just dead flesh.
Then you get into the whole fast-moving versus slow-moving zombies, which absolutely is a conversation that any horror movie fan has had at least one time or another.
Run! The slow, lumbering Romero zombies, as people call them, are always going to be more effective. They're not going to get you with speed, they're going to get you with numbers. And so there's more of a tension there because they're coming closer and closer.
I don't like running zombies. I don't think zombies should run.
There's the George Romero slow zombie, and of course the Zack Snyder fast zombie. Being on both sides and having perspective, I don't want to wade into that. Wow.
I mean, I saw bumper stickers, fast zombies suck. Okay? I don't know whether George put those bumper stickers out or not.
My guys are slow, they will always be slow.
His idea, if you're dead, you're continuing to be dead. You're continuing to disintegrate or rot, You don't become superheroes,
It also doesn't make physiological sense, too, because their muscles and their sinews, or all their muscle insertions and attachments have all now rotted and disconnected from their bones.
In the original, there were key zombies. The nun zombie, the baseball player zombie, you got to see the zombies. In the remake, fast and ugly.
It is that absolute lack of humanity that terrifies me.
They're gonna get you anyway, because they never stop. They're relentless.
For other monsters, you usually have to go find them. You have to go to the castle, you have to go under the pyramid or into the swamp. And my attitude is, if you do, well, that's your problem.
They're just dead flesh.
Whereas you can be sitting here minding your own business, and suddenly you hear the moan and the door breaks down and there's 100 zombies. That's scary.
Becoming a zombie. Some have dedicated their lives to making themselves and others look like zombies.
The zombies look really more menacing when their teeth are exposed.
I think I was born to play the undead.
How do you make dead coming back to life scary?
For these deluded individuals, looking like zombies is considered an art form.
When I was about 11, I saw A Man of a Thousand Faces, and that's the first movie that shows somebody creates this stuff, because I believe they were real before that. And then I decided, well, I'm going to be the guy that creates that. I'm the Wizard of Gore, the King of Gore, Dr. Splatter, I've been called that. So I think in general, most people who don't really know the body of work, I'm Mr. Makeup, because of Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, being in Land of the Dead, being in the Dawn of the Dead remake, directing the sequel. So yeah, I've been associated with zombies, I guess. It makes perfect sense to me now.
Sit up straight for me, please.
I had this effects school here. I get effects jobs, but I turn it over to my students. There is a cult following out there for the next Romero zombie film. It's almost like the next Star Wars film coming out, or the next exhibit from your favorite artist, Romero or me as the effects guy. And I think Greg Nicotero has taken it a step further as well. The baseball girl zombie with half her jaw missing, you could see through. That was makeup, and that was pretty damn good.
Scary jaw rip girl. I can't even tell if you're smiling underneath there or not. Because there you go. You're like, you can talk, There, see? She talks and everything. If you imagine over and over again doing all these creature effects, you don't want to ever feel like, oh, I've seen that look before. I've seen this before. I've seen that before. So you're constantly trying to reinvent what people look at as zombies. In Night of the Living Dead, they just had virtually no makeup. There was a couple latex wounds on them. And then, of course, Dawn of the Dead, you had your hero makeups, and Tom sort of set that blue-gray pallor to their faces with all the wounds and stuff on it. And then that was kind of the mark. Then when we did Day of the Dead in 1984, we took the design a little further. We went with like browns and gray palettes, and everything had real funky-looking teeth. And then as films have progressed, the techniques of makeup have also progressed, and the talent of the people that do it.
How do you make dead coming back to life scary? And there's only so much you can do to the face or the clothing to make somebody a zombie. Dawn of the Dead, we just painted people gray, and there was some appliance work. On Day of the Dead, it was almost everybody had an appliance on. We had 3 layers of zombies. The backgrounds wore masks. The middle people were made up by the costume department, and then we would do the appliance.
One of the concepts that I was thinking about as I was looking at like old photos of old mummies and stuff, and the first thing you notice is their lips always shrivel away from their teeth. And one of the things that's so interesting is zombies look really more menacing when their teeth are exposed. That's basically their primary weapon, is their teeth. So one of the things that we came up with was manufacturing vacuum clear dental trays that you would put them in your mouth, and it would push your lips back. So your teeth were always exposed, but you weren't snarling. It was like almost as if the lips had shriveled away.
The county coroner, I would call him constantly and say, well, look, if a body's in the basement of a building, or if it's in the attic and it's hot, he'll tell me how long he wants to know how long it's been dead, and that determines the skin color or if they're bloated, So there's a lot of research that goes into making the dead realistically dead, so especially when they're walking around.
Feast upon the flesh
And what about the people who want to be those zombies?
Welcome to my world.
I think I was born to play the undead. It's when I play a living character, it gets a little dicey. That is my range as an actor. The dead to the undead. That is my genre. I was in Dawn of the Dead. I played Tucker the Trucker, and I got eaten in a sewer. Damn. Which we all will be. And the second one was Land of the Dead, where I was Butcher. And in Diary of the Dead, I was this pathetic white supremacist guy. The only way I could save my life if I just hooked up with this group of African American people. I was their mascot.
You've got 50 zombies in front of you, you know, and if you say, okay, you guys all walk in here, if you make a gesture like that, all of a sudden you got 50 people doing exactly the same thing. So I just always say, just do your best zombie, man.
Well, I watch the zombie movies, and they have that stiff leg, one stiff leg walk, and I thought, well, what if I did two legs? If I had two stiff hip and two stiff leg, and just try to make everything as painful looking as possible. You know, you have to get there, and everything hurts. I try to look at the most painful way to walk.
All over the world, in cities just like yours, people who are not yet zombies have embraced the notion, if you can't beat them, join them.
There's definitely something attractive about coming back and being a zombie, because suddenly you don't have any of the worries in the world that you had as someone who was alive. I mean, you're basically want to eat flesh or eat brains or whatever kind of zombie you are. And the best evidence of that is the popularity of zombie walks, where people are dressing up like zombies, getting together in a big horde and acting like zombies, you know, walking through the streets downtown.
No, definitely this is more than we could have expected. This is a great turnout. It's huge. Definitely people are going to be remembering this for years.
That's also just sort of a great little way to have a fun rebellion.
I'm just pretty sure zombies are inevitable, and we should just, you know, play with the scenario so that we know how it's going to go down.
I find that absolutely fascinating. I mean, most people wait until Halloween before they put on their costumes, but zombie walks aren't limited to Halloween, and it's a real act of the imagination. It's a fandom that isn't just passive. You're not just receiving images from a movie. You're actually making your own zombie out of yourself.
The idea is to just not bring character all day.
We're all really zombies when you think about it.
No brain eating, I hope. That's what we don't want. When you start eating brains on your zombie walks, gone too far.
Yet, at the core of the fad, there is something disturbingly real.
The first time I heard of Wade Davis was when I was still in college, and I read a review of this book he had written called The Serpent and the Rainbow. And it was a book that took an entirely new look at zombies. It wasn't a book written by somebody who wrote about horror movies or somebody who wrote about folk stories or mythology. It was written by somebody who was an ethnobotanist and who went to Haiti to find out whether there was any kind of truth in any part of the zombie story. And what he found was that there was.
Scholar and author Wade Davis brought the weight of academia to bear on reports of zombie activity.
There was a series of reports in really all the literature, accounts of missionaries, the popular writings on Haiti, that spoke about cases that seemed to have a certain legitimacy and at least that collectively demanded investigation.
While in Haiti, Davis was introduced to a sinister poison that, with a few drops, could induce victims into a zombie-like state.
There was a plethora of ingredients, sort of everything from snakes to toads to various plants, human remains. But the critical and interesting ingredient was a species of fish called spheroides. It turns out that it has within it the most powerful neurotoxin ever discovered from nature, which brings on peripheral paralysis, dramatically low metabolic rates, and yet amazingly consciousness is retained until the moment of death. That discovery instantly took the whole zombie thing from the realm of the phantasmagoric into the realm of the possible.
I think the reason Serpent and the Rainbow was so frightening was that it wasn't a conventional zombie movie. Zombies aren't the product of sorcery. They're the product of a botanical process. They've been drugged. They're people who have been drugged into the appearance of living death. That's not the stuff of a horror story in a supernatural sense. That's the stuff of a real-life horror story.
The fear and hate is not of zombies, as bad movies would imply. It's of becoming a zombie. Because what is a zombie? A zombie is someone who's had their soul stolen by sorcery.
What's a zombie? Well, a zombie, there's, Mr. Bill is the living dead.
So who can we blame? Who can we point to? Who is responsible for this tide of undead terror?
Romero.
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 Romero. Romero.
I think it's not at all unfair to say that George Romero really is the father of the modern zombie, and that without Night of the Living Dead, zombies wouldn't have the kind of cultural currency they have now, because he liberated them and made them into a creature that you could use in all kinds of ways. You could make the zombie reflect all kinds of anxieties, in the same way that vampires can reflect all kinds of cultural anxieties, or werewolves can reflect all kinds of cultural anxieties.
The zombies I grew up on were the zombies from White Zombie, I Walked with a Zombie. They were those, you know, bug-eyed cats in the Caribbean, you know, who were doing the dirty work for Lugosi, who owned the castle. You know, they were picking his cotton or something, and every once in a while he could get them to knock somebody off. And I just never thought that they were zombies. And people say to me now, well, you invented the new zombie. And I said, well, I never called them zombies. I didn't mean to invent a new zombie. I love the old zombies.
Major turning point is with Romero's Night of the Living Dead in the late 1960s, where all of a sudden we no longer have this zombie being controlled by another force, but rather the zombie without any other direction than these basic instincts that remain, the need to eat, as a matter of fact, to consume.
Well, when we made Night of the Living Dead, we had no money. First of all, there were 10 of us, and we called ourselves Image 10, pretentious name. And we each kicked in $600, and that $6 grand allowed us to rent the farmhouse and start shooting. It was really guerrilla filmmaking. All our friends, all people from ad agencies, news announcers, people that from around Pittsburgh, which is where we were, who, you know, were willing to come out and make fools of themselves.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
Dwayne, the lead actor, was an African American who just happened to be the best actor from among our friends.
If you're stupid enough to go die in that trap, that's your business. However, I am not stupid enough to follow you.
And so we just said, hey, Dwayne, would you like to do this? And we thought we were so cool because we didn't change the script when Dwayne agreed to do it. I mean, the script didn't mention anything, didn't describe him, the color of his skin at all.
Initially, I loved zombie movies, not just for the horror element, but the social commentary.
Now, you get the hell down in the cellar. You can be the boss down there. I'm boss up here.
Take zombies out of Night of the Living Dead.
Bastards!
And make it any crisis. You have a black man in the 60s becoming the leader.
You ready upstairs? Yeah. Okay, toss him!
Fighting to survive, smacking a white woman, and telling a white man, I'm the boss. Wow.
Amazingly, we didn't recognize how political the film was, how on the surface how political it was, because when we were making the film, we were basically living in that farmhouse, and bullshitting about the overtones and and what was happening in the world, the war, this new funky thing in Vietnam, and riots in the streets all of a sudden. And it's funny, in retrospect, I think we maybe should have pointed at that a little bit.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes. Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
At the end of Night of the Living Dead, Romero has a few final scenes, final shots, as a matter of fact, of the film that make an extremely powerful comment on racism using still photography. There are very reminiscent of all sorts of images that we've seen of lynchings, for instance. Black and white, grainy still photographs that you can imagine were just taken out of a newspaper on some lynching down in Alabama. And you make that connection on how all of a sudden this horror film on zombies has become one of the most powerful statements at the end of the 1960s on the reactionary attitude of the dominant white culture against the civil movement, really.
They need you down there by the barn.
You know, we just thought it was cool. We didn't think, wow, man, this is going to rock people's boats. And it did.
Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the Living Dead.
Now, when you go forward 10 years, you have Dawn of the Dead. And Dawn of the Dead is very much about the panic of people who are seeing their world taken away from them.
Socially, I met a group of people that had developed a big shopping mall in Pittsburgh, and it was one of the first big temples to consumerism, indoor mall. And it gave me the idea for a sequel, finally. I said, well, I could do a sequel which would be people holed up, still a siege film. They're holed up in a place, it's just a bigger place. And I could really make a comment about consumerism, and I could still be sort of political with it.
What's that building? Oh, it's one of those new malls. You know, it was the first, like, one of the first malls even back then, you know, so. George, you know, he made the people walking around the mall as zombies, caricatures of you go to any mall today, there are zombies walking around shopping malls today, you know, hypnotized by the Muzak or the whatever, you know, and that's why he had zombies dragging toasters or, you know, carrying stuff, you know. That was his statement, you know.
I think what made George Romero so brilliant was that every one of his zombie movies fit the decade in which he was making it.
He took his unique vision of terror one step further.
In the 70s, you had people in a shopping mall, trapped by their own material greed.
Now, George A. Romero takes us out of the night, beyond the dawn, and into the darkest day of horror the world has ever known.
In the 80s, you had people hiding in a bunker, avoiding the problem. Really? In the Reagan era?
And of course, Land of the Dead is a comment on our modern era with George Bush and the Iraq War. I think that, you know, every creative person, regardless of being a filmmaker or an author or, you know, an illustrator, I think we draw from real life experiences.
Land of the Dead is really a movie about a society in retrenchment. Humanity has not found a solution for the zombie plague. The movie is set at Fiddler's Green, which is a luxury housing development on an island, which is an excellent place to fortify against zombies.
Bordered on three sides by mighty rivers, Fiddler's Green offers luxury living in the grand old style. Dine at one of 6 fine restaurants.
And it's about what happens basically when all the rich cut and run. They're the ones who have the money, who have the power, the influence, the connections to get themselves out of the sea of horror that most of the world is drowning in. Diary of the Dead is actually a really fascinating movie because what it basically is a reboot of the Night of the Living Dead story. It's as though all the things that happened in Night of the Living Dead, all those decades ago, are actually happening for the first time.
This film is not linked to any of the others. It goes back to the very first day, the very first night when things start, when the phenomenon begins. I'm sort of going back to the very beginning and starting over.
Even though his type of zombie was widely imitated, widely copied, used by other filmmakers in all kinds of films, Romero himself is somebody who has always been very aware that there is a cultural subtext that goes with zombies. And if you look at Romero's zombie movies, you can see that each of them is extremely rooted in the time in which it was made, and the anxieties it reflects are very much of that time.
It's my way of taking this phenomenon. Oh, the dead are coming back to life. What an extraordinary thing is happening to the world. But I've used that as not in and of itself as a metaphor, but as a way to show how the world reacts to extraordinary change.
That's why I think that Romero should be commended, not just for what he did with zombies, but the man really was and still is one of the few directors that tries to get people to think. I mean, there's just so many eyeballs that can blow out of your head and just so much entrails that can fall on the floor before you want to use your brain and actually think.
How to survive a zombie attack.
I got him.
End of the world, zombies, death. Ever thought about it?
Oh, like on an everyday basis. If you're a zombie geek, you can't help but think about that stuff. Would you board yourself up inside your house? Would you make a run for the woods? Where would you go to stock up? Would you find a Costco? Lock yourself up in there?
Without any warning. Have you considered how you would survive a zombie attack? Maybe it's time you did.
I think one of the most important guys out there for the zombie subgenre right now is Max Brooks.
You can never be too prepared.
Mel Brooks' son, who wrote the Zombie Survival Guide, which is very tongue and rotted cheek, and more recently World War Z, which is one of the best pieces of zombie fiction I've ever read.
No one is more surprised at the success of Zombie Survival Guide than me.
Who are the living dead? What are they? And why do they want to destroy us?
Most people seek out horror, I think, because they feel at their core very safe.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
They feel like they're living in a safe world and they want to be scared. I'm already scared. I don't need to go searching for it. So I write anti-horror. I write about how to stop the horror. I don't need to make it up.
He is maybe one of the most important people telling zombie stories right now.
When I started doing my zombie self-defense lectures, I thought they were just going to be a joke.
I don't think there's anything remotely funny about being killed and eaten by zombies.
I was completely unprepared for the barrage of questions. All real. All questions like, what kind of sword should I use? What kind of steel should that sword be? Should it be full tang? What's the blade length? Should I wear body armor? These are the kind of questions I get asked constantly.
So to survive, you may need to kill a zombie. Would you be ready?
Well, the only way to kill a zombie is shoot the head.
I understand you're having a difficult time killing these things, Sheriff.
Just shoot them in the head. They seem to go down permanently when you shoot them in the head.
It's about the brain.
Really, all we are biologically are brains. And everything else, our lungs, our heart, our digestive tract, that's all just to create a support system for our brains.
Something in the brain is continuing to motor drive the body even after it's dead. So the only way to kill them is to kill the brain.
Go straight for the head.
It's kill or be killed. So how do you get them before they get you?
Shotguns are great. I mean, there is nothing more fun to shoot in the world than a shotgun. And I mean this, I'm not joking. I love guns, and guns are great. Honey, can you think of a better weapon to protect our house? No, there's nothing like a shotgun.
I always say, be careful with firearms, because first they run out of ammo, and second of all, they're loud. And you're basically announcing to zombies, dinner is served.
So what is the most effective way to destroy the brain?
I think the machete is possibly the best weapon, simply because it's light, it's easy to carry, it's easy to use, you don't have to train. People like samurai swords, but I always tell them a samurai sword was meant to be used by a samurai. That takes a lot of training. Better to use a peasant weapon, like a shovel or an axe or something like that.
You may be in your schoolyard playing when the signal comes.
Zombies can't plan, but you can. It's time to ensure your family has a zombie survival strategy in place.
This family knows what to do.
My zombie strategy is just keep heading north. Unfortunately, I'm a little too practical. When winter comes, it'll be cold, they'll freeze. Come spring, you come out, problem solved.
Well, what a lot of people don't know is that Max Brooks and David Wellington and myself and all the other zombie writers, we actually have a compound in Colorado, and we all, we can all get there safely should the zombie epidemic ever happen.
My home has one staircase.
I've got a balcony, so if I had to snipe some zombies, I could do it from there.
So in an emergency, I can just pull up the stairs and I'll be fine.
To survive zombies, you need weapons.
I could bar the doors.
I have grown enough bamboo that I could plant them and build a fence out of it.
And you need more weapons, and you need a bunker.
I could get rainwater if I needed to.
And you need more weapons.
I'm ready. I'm pretty much ready. I got good soil. I can start growing some turnips. Yeah, they better not come for me.
And hope?
You think about this kind of stuff all the time, mostly just because it's fun. That whole what-if scenario.
Without any warning.
So when the zombies come, and they will come, are you prepared? Don't wait until you come face to face with a real zombie to find out.
I was probably 13 years old, maybe.
You're still afraid.
Stop it now, I mean it.
And I'll never forget, it would be like, as soon as the zombie showed up, we'd be like, ah! And we would shoot the TV, bang, 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 with a fake gun. And as soon as your 6 shots were up, you had to give the gun to the other guy. You get 6 shots, and then you don't have the gun anymore. By the end of the movie, with all the zombies, we were so nervous. We're 13 years old, we're like, the zombies are gonna get us, we don't have any more bullets. And we played this really stupid game, but it was so frightening.
Fortunately, the latest in modern technology is available to assist you in the art of zombie defense.
Video games in general follow fairly predictable themes because most of them involve killing something or shooting something.
It's just sort of an extension of the movies, but again, like literature, your canvas is huge.
So there are things that you can archetypally kill. You can kill Nazis, you can kill space creatures or aliens, you can kill robots, and of course the undead.
You can do the kind of things that you don't have the budget for in a movie. So game makers are exploring these sort of vast landscapes and doing all kinds of crazy, gravity-defying gore stuff. And that's where the appeal is there. I think that's where all the new ground is being broken in terms of gore in zombie stories.
I played Resident Evil. Scared the hell out of me.
The Resident Evil movies are based on a series of video games, the Resident Evil video games, which are basically shooter games, except that you're not shooting soldiers, you're shooting zombies. And they very much do revolve around what is basically the spectator version of playing a video game. You have a main character played by Mila Jovovich who keeps waking up in various ways in these zombie-infested areas.
It appears the dead are coming back to life and eating the flesh of the living.
The primary reason why zombies are appealing is that they look like us.
It is unclear why or how this is happening.
But it's okay to kill them, right? And in some very interesting ways, right? So zombie is an absolutely no-guilt snack, right? You can kill them all day and, or put them down because they're undead, but you can kill them all day and you need not feel guilty about them.
You may be asking yourself, is there an upside to zombies? When they aren't eating the flesh of the living, zombies have spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry of feature films, special effects houses, books, and comics. Even your everyday entrepreneurs are finding ways to cash in on the zombie hysteria.
Because I've done a lot of freelance stuff, and because I've done a lot of portraiture, and I ended up doing a portrait of myself and my wife Andrea as zombies, and then it kind of blew up, and it was almost an overnight thing. It just exploded, and I was deluged with all of this work from a lot of people who are really excited about it. Because it is a zombie portrait, I want them to look like the person I'm doing, but I mean, it can range from, you know, a head wound and a complete side of their face gone, deluged with maggots and, you know, and flies and stuff, or, you know, pustules. It always ends up turning out, you know, kind of neat and cool, you know, and people are wild about it, and I love that.
Of course, graphic depictions of zombies are nothing new. Horror comics have been bringing us chilling tales of the undead for decades.
I love the genre, and I would, under the covers, read the forbidden EC comic books with a little flashlight.
Horror comics were huge in the 1950s and I believe the early 60s. And then there was a big push in the States by sort of the morality squad to tone down on this horror and gore and all these terrible, terrible comics that were coming out. So the horror comics kind of got packaged up and set by the wayside. But zombie comics have never really stopped being produced. Within the last 3 or 4 years, there's definitely been a renaissance. You catch more horror fans with blood than you do with honey. And if you can write a zombie comic that incorporates a lot of sophisticated and interesting ideas about people and relationships, but float it in a sea of graphic, horrible violence, then you'll attract the people who aren't likely to be interested in complex moral messages about people and violence, because they're seeing, you know, the blood on the page, and they're intrigued and they're interested because that's what normally interests them. But you can also subtly sell something a little more sophisticated.
Feast upon the flesh. Zombies have even invaded literature, ravishing their way into classics like Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and modern original works such as World War Z and The Rising have become bestsellers.
The Rising, in a nutshell, is a man searching for his son in a post-apocalyptic zombie world. His son is in one state, he's in another, and he has to basically travel across the country, picking up companions along the way. At its heart, I think The Rising appeals to readers because it's something a lot of us can identify with, not being able to protect your child, and what lengths you'd go to protect them.
Look, Dad, it goes like this. See?
Although I say it jokingly, you know, I really do think there's something to my zombies are the divorce lawyers and the telemarketers and, you know, all the other annoyances of our modern world.
The Zombie Survival Guide was a hit, but it wasn't a bestseller. It had staying power, which is shocking. I've always been told that the shelf life of most books is somewhere between milk and yogurt, so I was very stunned that it kept going. But then World War Z came out and was a New York Times bestseller, and apparently did so well that suddenly Zombie Survival Guide became a New York Times bestseller. And I thought, no, time. Bestsellers are murder mysteries and diet books and something to do with Jesus or George Bush. No, not zombies.
But film is where zombies have truly thrived, and no one has prospered more than the special effects companies and makeup artists.
20 years ago, myself, Howard Berger, and Bob Kurtzman founded K&B Effects Group. We literally have had our fingers in most of the films that have been made over the last 2 decades. We've done literally almost every kind of creature that you can imagine. And for me, I mean, I love zombie stuff. I mean, I still see almost every zombie movie that comes out, I'll go see.
Why are people obsessed with zombie movies? Why are there so many being made? And I think more than anything, it's a reflection of sort of a trend.
A trend that has made for some very healthy profits at the box office. And yet, ironically, the granddaddy of the modern zombie genre has yet to cash in on the monsters he created.
The movie went out and it played drive-ins and neighborhood theaters and actually returned some money. It actually made a profit. So we actually made money on it. But then all of a sudden it stopped, and we said, why? And we realized that we had lost the copyright. Our title was Night of the Flesh Eaters. It wasn't Night of the Living Dead. And the distributor, Walter Reed, it was Night of the Living Dead was their title. And we, stupidly, a bunch of young guys in Pittsburgh, put the little C with the circle around it on the title. And when they removed the title, it was the same overprint, and the copyright came off. So that film is in public domain. Otherwise, we'd be doing this interview in the south of France or someplace, in a villa.
Look at the money I've made from zombie movies. I just think there should be like an honorarium. If you're going to make a zombie movie, you should give George Romero a couple of grand. Just like send it to him. There should be a George Romero tax if it was up to me.
I think Hollywood is afraid of me. I mean, even when we made Land of the Dead, which was a very ambitious film, we had half the budget of the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Even though Land of the Dead got, I think it was one of the best reviewed films of that summer. You know, it has to go out and make a certain amount of money. If it doesn't go out and make a certain amount of money, then you're going to get the next job so easily.
On Land of the Dead, the biggest challenge for us was we had to shoot in 40 days, actually nights, with a very limited budget. It was like $17 million to make that movie, which looks like a $50 million movie. For me, it's all about repaying my debt to George Romero. You know, you want to be in debt to George Romero. But I wanted to do something fun, and I wanted to do something cool, and I was really proud of how the makeups looked.
They're just dead flesh. Not all the flesh in zombie films is rotting. Filmmakers are using stars like Mila Jovovich and Jenna Jameson to show us the sexier side of the undead, while others are telling the zombie story from a distinctly female point of view.
Graveyard Alive is about a shy nurse who's bitten by a zombie and becomes a flesh-eating sex kitten. There's something about, maybe, I don't know if it's being a woman or just being a bit off-kilter, that I identify myself with the monster that's outside of society and trying to fit in.
Are you getting regular dental checkups?
Doesn't quite know why. Feels they're a bit different, you know, kind of like Frankenstein, actually, where you feel you're different, you're not quite sure why, you try to connect with people. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you kill them.
Women generally are not all that interested in zombies, but you do have a filmmaker like Elza Keppard who has made a zombie movie and given it some distinct feminine touches.
Shy nurse Patsy Powers is in love with the handsome doctor who is engaged to the bitchy rival nurse Goody Two-Shoes.
You're in love with her again, aren't you?
And Patsy pines for the doctor, but she's too shy to do anything about it. And then, of course, she becomes a zombie along the way and has to deal with her craving for eating flesh and how she deals with it in the hospitals by eating patients, you know, surreptitiously killing them and then cutting them up in the morgue and putting their flesh in Ziploc bags. Because, you know, she's practical.
And yet, despite the warnings of impending doom in all the films, literature, and comic books, the legions of zombie supporters continue to grow.
Big thing about respecting other people's property, like there are sidewalk sales going on. Don't run up and put your grubby jam hands all over their merchandise.
The zombie fans tend to be a good cross-section of people. One woman came up to me once with one of my slogans, "Blades don't need reloading," tattooed on her forearm.
I've never met a zombie, just these ones in the street.
You know, zombie movies actually inspire a pretty intense kind of fandom. And we're not talking just people who love the movies and who will go to any zombie movie ever. And we're not just talking people who will buy the action figures.
My proof of existence. When all the films are gone, this will be rotting in a landfill somewhere. I was alive.
So will you become one of them? Or will you take action and protect humanity from the zombie apocalypse?
Zombies are, without a doubt, the right monster for the time.
Stay inside and lock.
Because we are living in a time of insecurity.
The emergency broadcast system for the greater Milwaukee area.
And zombies are perfect because they exist within the apocalyptic genre. You can't just have one zombie. That doesn't make any sense. You could stab it through the eye with a pencil and that would be the end of it. You need thousands, you need millions, and you need a societal breakdown. You need the end of law and order, and so you literally need to have the kind of world that we're all afraid of right now.
We live in a world where you consume fast food and you're irradiated with cell phone waves and you're just really under assault all the time. I think in many ways we feel like zombies.
That's what I find the most fascinating, the idea of, consumers are zombies. Maybe people in the military who do what they're told without thinking are zombies. The average Joe not paying attention to what's going around him is a zombie.
That defines my life. It defines most people's lives. You show up for work in the morning and then you go back home at night. Why? Ultimately, in the larger scheme of things, why am I doing this? Because I'm a zombie.
Zombies have moved from a supernatural kind of phenomena where there's a graveyard and the zombies claw their way up because they're possessed or there's some kind of supernatural element to it.
Zombie!
It's easy for people to understand, oh yeah, there's some kind of weird scientific mishap, which we suspect is probably going on anyway, and now they're zombies. Rather than, a demonic force has possessed someone and they're hanging out in a graveyard. They're not in a graveyard anymore. A graveyard's a very religious thing. Zombies are now in your shopping mall.
Cause mutation.
I'm not scared of ghosts. I'm not scared of anything like that, the dark powers. No, I'm scared of something that's real and physical. Like disease. When you think about how the influenza of 1918 killed more people than the Black Death. 1918? That's not even 100 years ago. That's terrifying.
I think, the best horror, be it movie or book or video game, is, something that we can all identify with. It's taking a shower and finding a lump. It's sending your child outside to play and hearing the screech of car tires a moment later. It's that phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's the things that all of us, regardless of where we live or who we are, it's a shared fear. And those are the things that keep me awake at night.
It's easier and it's safer for people to imagine what they would do in a zombie outbreak as opposed to what they would do when the ice caps melt or if there was a nuclear war.
Without any warning.
Stephen King says, I don't have nightmares because I give them all to you. There may be something to that.
Why do people go see films? Why do people allow themselves for 2 hours to indulge in a kind of pleasure that they would never dare indulge in real life? And that is why very often we go see horror films, zombie movies in particular, but all horror films, to identify with the monster. The monster has a certain freedom that we don't have, and that is extremely appealing. When it feels like slashing people to pieces, it does it. When I feel like slashing people to pieces because they annoy me at work, well, I'll go see a horror film instead.
Feast upon the flesh.
I think zombies remain an interesting story for a lot of reasons. That line between life and death, and how people define that inexorable separation between life and death determines their mystical worldview, but it's basically the one single thought that is constantly at the back of anyone's mind who is conscious.
I don't know how much longer they'll stick around, but I do know this, that you can't ever kill a zombie. Even when you think it's dead, it'll get back up and it will come after you.
The thing that makes zombies a safe area, even though they are the monsters of despair, the ones who keep coming, is that unlike real life and real life's problems, there are rules and you can learn them. And the movie will tell them to you, or the book you're reading will tell them to you. They make sense of what appears to be, and indeed may well be, an intractable problem. But it's not an incomprehensible problem. Whereas I think for most of us, the larger problems of the world are incomprehensible. I can't even wrap my mind around the extent of certain problems in the world today.
No, I think the zombies will just, they'll organize and they'll carpool and they'll have schools and they'll raise their kids like everybody else. And they'll love their children.
They're just dead flesh.
I think you can never give George Romero enough credit for, creating this wildly popular subgenre that has captured people's imaginations.
George was the guy that opened the door. And of course, he still makes jokes to this day about, one of these days your dad's gonna just see me in the street and smack me in the side of the head because you were supposed to be a doctor and now, I'm like, George, trust me, there are no regrets.
The undead have been very good to me. This house was built on the undead.
It's amazing to me, actually, that, you know, this little film, a bunch of us young guys in the Berg made this movie, and now that creature has become sort of idiomatic. You got to shoot him in the head. I mean, people know zombie rules the way they know vampire rules. You know, there have been enough films and enough depictions of these things that they've become comfortable as monsters. And so I think they're popular right now. They will not be popular. I predict within months, or within a couple of years, maybe even months, forget about it. And then 10 years from now, somebody will say, hey, remember those zombie movies? Let's make a zombie movie, man. So I think...